I'm in the New York state of mind. I've seen all the movie stars in their fancy cars and their limousines.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage, Stu Soled.
Eastern world, it is exploding, violence flaring.
Okay, good morning everyone. That was my favorite song when I was growing up. Tired of Leaving Destruction by Barry White. We can listen to it later. So welcome everyone to the special session that we have today. It's titled The Future of Catalysis, Sustainable Manufacturing. It's really about where we're going and how we're going to get there. And it's going to be both, we'll have a panel discussion and then we already have solicited questions. We'll be with Leslie more during the presentation. So first let me say that I'm really happy to be at this meeting. I think it's fantastic. Seeing everybody again after all these years, it's really uplifting. We have a great community, and I really want to thank the organizers for doing such a great job in a very difficult environment. So for me it's also special because I was born and bred in New York, in the Bronx, and many of you went last night to Yankee Stadium, and maybe you did see the Bronx as you grew up there. So it's not one of the most famous boroughs, and I hope you all made it back there okay. But it's where I'm from, and I'm really happy to be back here. So, you know, in the last couple of weeks I've been thinking about the last meeting we had in Chicago 3 years ago, and it kind of feels like we went through some sort of time warp where the universe split open and we came out in a different alternate reality, because I don't know that any of us would have predicted the world we have now 3 years ago. And things change a lot, and I have two quick quotes. They're from a person with the same last name, Lennon. So the first one is my favorite one, John Lennon, and one of the songs is All You Need Is Love. I like that, and it's true to this day. The second one is from another Lennon, who's Latin here. But his quote, regardless of what you think of him and what you think of what we have in the world these days, is kind of interesting. And his quote is, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen. And I kind of feel like we went through that. We're in that. We're in a world of change. And you know, I know, even for myself, for example, when I've been working on something for over 20 years. That just ended, and some new stuff. So we're all in a major transformation. It's not the first time in history. Back in the 1850s, there was kind of a crisis in the world, and that involved, there wasn't enough fertilizer, so the population had grown a little. There was on the order of maybe 1 billion people then. There just wasn't enough fertilizer, especially in Europe. It was a really big problem. So what happened, they took the steamships that they had then, they went to South America, they collected the guano from some of the west coast of South America, they brought it back to Europe, had a lot of nitrogen in that, it was really good composted stuff. But it introduced an issue, particularly in Ireland, because it brought a fungus into Ireland, and it basically destroyed the potato crop. And as a result, several million people in Ireland died. A lot left Ireland, so now in the US we have like 30+ million Irish Americans, and in Ireland we have like 5 million people. So there's lots of unintended consequences, there's lots of changes. We're going into another period like that. And so for the people, young people that are in the audience today, I will say this, you know, you have an opportunity to make a really big difference, because the problem that we have now that we're all living with was actually created to a large degree by catalytic chemists, because that same issue with not having enough fertilizer or whatever was resolved, you know, in the early 1900s with the ammonia synthesis process. And as a result of that, we went from a population of approximately 1 billion to 8 billion in 1 century. Whereas in the prior 8 centuries, we doubled the population. So things went exponential. And of course, in some ways that's good. Maybe many of us wouldn't be here if that hadn't happened. But it has created a huge stress in our world, in our environment, in our food, in our water, and certainly in the greenhouse gas problem and all of that. So that problem, to some degree, was created by people working in catalysis. And I think it's our responsibility to try to deal with that problem now. And it's going to take the effort of this group to do that. And the young ones here in particular, you have a real opportunity to make a real change in the world. So I hope you leave here feeling that that's something that you can really do. Okay, so again, the future, I mean, none of us, like I said, none of us knew 3 years ago that the world's going to be like this, let alone predict what's going to happen in a decade or 2 or 3 from now. But one thing is for sure, okay, we're going to have to be part of the solution. And so at this point in time, probably the best thing is we need a myriad of options, solutions, discoveries. And the best way for that to happen, I think one of the ways that's critical, is for the catalysis community to come together and do it, for industry and academia to partner really as best they can. I know we live in 2 different worlds. I hear it all the time. I've lived through it for 4 decades of that, but it's really important that we somehow try to bridge that gap. And I think part of the reason for having this is to try to help us do that, in the sense that we have panelists from 2 companies that are going to talk about what their current perspective is, how they're trying to deal with the changing world or whatever. And I hope that stimulates some thoughts and some questions in your case. So let me, at this point, without counting off for the whole morning, let me get to introduce the panelists that we have. So first over here we have Niels Spotty. Niels is the Senior Research Manager of New Technologies and Process Catalysis at BASF. BASF being, I think, probably the world's largest chemical company. And they are going through huge changes, and Niels will tell us about that in a couple of minutes. In the center there, we have Nagori Sabio. Nagori is from ExxonMobil, a company I know a little bit about. She's the head of optimization and life cycle analysis group, and going to talk to us about one of the approaches to make sure that someone like myself, who's just a chemist by training, doesn't think they have a great idea and then realize that, well, you didn't think about this and you didn't think about that. So we'll hear more about the sort of the scientific basis of figuring out maybe what are the best ways to go. And then finally, we have Vivian Schwartz, who's the manager of the Catalysis Science Program of the DOE, Basic Energy Sciences. Many of you in academia are very familiar with this, and she's one of the people you go to try to get some help to be able to work on these problems. And finally, our guest who's going to moderate the session is Deidre Dunn, who's sitting right here. And Deidre is the executive publisher with Elsevier, working with chemical and environmental engineering journals. And the journals are interesting media that help us spread, propagate, learn from each other and whatever, so we're very happy to have her. She's going to actually moderate the discussion, and I think I'm going to hand it over to Deidre at this point. So I hope you guys enjoyed the session.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for the warm introduction. We will have 3 speakers, as mentioned, and it's my pleasure to introduce the first speaker to present, which is Niels Spotty from BASF. We will then move on to Nagori and then to Vivian, followed by the Q&A. So thank you very much for contributing in the last few days to the Slido questions. We've been collating those, and we have a nice list of very juicy questions to run through after the talks. I'd encourage you to continue submitting your questions through the course of the presentations. They will appear on the screen in front of us here, and we'll try to answer as many questions as possible during the session. But rest assured that all of the questions that have come through will be addressed, if not during the discussion today, in a prospective publication that we intend to actually put together and publish after the session to make full use of all of the feedback that's coming through today and make sure that we answer all of the questions that you in the audience have. So with that, I'd like to introduce Niels to present his perspective.
So also good morning from my side. I'm Niels from BASF in Germany, where I work as a research chemist for catalysis, leading a group called New Technologies in Process Catalysis. And it's a pleasure for me to be here, and I'm looking really forward to having the discussion in the next hour with you. So what will be different in the chemical and the refining industry in the future? So climate change and reaching net zero by 2050 is for sure an extremely challenging task in our today's global society. And for sure it cannot be fulfilled following the same patterns or existing value chain. Clearly, there's a need for a paradigm shift, which holds true also for the chemical industry. So first, reduction and avoidance of CO2, or even chemical use of CO2, slips into the focus of us as chemical research or industrial research. The easiest or most convenient.
Give him the pointer. Give him that.
Still early to move. So, showing again the challenging target. So, first of all, electrification of chemical processes is the straightforward approach. This allows us to provide the necessary process heat emission-free. So electrically heated furnaces, heat pumps, steam generation are the most prominent examples for exactly this strategy. But being here at the Catalysis conference, for sure, this cannot be a sufficient answer for you. For sure, I can assure you that we definitely have a need for new processes and especially new catalysts to reach our challenging targets. So operating in this set of new boundary conditions makes formerly unthinkable routes attractive. To give you an example, ammonia production. So especially for us as BASF, known as the inventor of the famous Haber-Bosch process for ammonia production, ammonia cracking gives us a hard time. Nevertheless, we see ammonia cracking as a very interesting and very promising, important technology to enable ammonia as an energy vector. Also, reverse water gas shift. Currently, there is not really a place for reverse water gas shift in our existing value chains. Producing carbon monoxide from CO2 and hydrogen reverts our today's economics. Nevertheless, under the new boundary condition, the reverse water gas shift for sure has the potential to become a key technology enabling emission-free production of oxochemicals or Fischer-Tropsch products. So, in a nutshell, the evolution towards more sustainable chemical production will comprise of several ways, which is, for example, the use of renewable raw materials, chemical recycling, C1 chemistry, electrification. And it's a good thing I've seen so many very good examples here in New York over the last 3 days. The main challenge for the chemical industry now is to rethink the existing value chains and to come up with the most promising, the best alternative for emission-free chemical production. This opens a broad field of new possibilities and initiates a very fruitful competition of ideas. The most decisive criteria, besides the carbon footprint as such, is the most efficient use of renewable energy and the moderate use of capital. So drop-in solution for existing assets are clearly the silver bullet. So finding myself in the middle of this challenge, I highly appreciate the task giving us as chemists and engineers this broad field of scientific possibilities. For sure, sustainability is at the core of what we are doing at BASF.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. Now we welcome Gloria Savio to give her excellent global perspective.
Thank you so much, Deidre. As Niels was saying, basically, I'm going to have the remote here.
Yes.
And you press the green. Yes, so basically the challenge of achieving our net zero 2050 ambition requires transformative solutions in the manufacturing of our operations that need to ensure holistic benefits. We, in ExxonMobil, we share the same challenges as BASF in our chemical businesses, but we also need to decarbonize our fuels and lubricant value chains. For that, we use life cycle assessment. Life cycle assessment is basically a framework that allows us to quantify the environmental impacts of a product or a process over its entire life cycle. LCA is an emergent field in chemical engineering and draws from scientific principles from physics to actually quantify environmental impacts across systems of different complexities. So traditionally in industry, most commonly used performance indicators have been economic, such as maximizing profit or minimizing cost. Most commonly found non-economic indicators are maximizing customer satisfaction or maximizing product quality. Most of the efforts related to the environment that we have seen in the last decades have to do with industrial energy efficiency concepts. And although those have brought environmental benefits, and clearly the Haber-Bosch process is one of those examples, they mostly focus at the plant level, and the impacts in this case can be shifted across the supply chain. Life cycle assessment brings us a holistic framework to ensure that when we minimize the environmental impact in one of the steps, we are not shifting the burdens across the value chain. This ensures at least a holistic environmental impact reduction for that value chain. Besides ensuring that we are minimizing the environmental impact and not shifting the burdens of our value chain, we have other challenges as well. We have to ensure that the environmental benefits that we find in the scientific scale are actually translated and are maintained and not even improved across the technology delivery pipeline. In this very complex figure that is very typical in my field, process systems engineering, but maybe a little bit newer to you, I show a graph. In the x-axis you can see the temporal scope, and in the y-axis you have the geographical scope. And as you move from the left to the right of the graph, from science to engineering to larger scale systems, you have to, it's very difficult, but you have to ensure that all of your improvements that you find in the lower scales are actually maintained. This, I can understand that can seem a really daunting task, and it's definitely a multi-scale, multidisciplinary challenge that is really opening our eyes to different solutions, completely different points of view and disciplines, and hopefully novel and transformative impactful solutions that we hope this community is going to help us find. I really, I really would like to say, and Stu is looking at me, as ingenious as we all would like to be, right? Like Stu Soled is a genius, right? But we have to be open to the fact that not all of our solutions will actually survive basically the stretching cone of visibility that we face here in the technology space. And many times I am in my office and who knocks my office door and he says, I have an incredible solution. And we actually evaluate it and it turns out, sometimes it's not that great. But, sorry. But, and I have many of these examples across in my experience in the company. I have many examples that have surprised many people in the company. So, for example, I was working in a project, mostly, if you look at that scale, it was in the manufacturing plant, and I had one of our scientists that was looking to implement a membrane technology to recover a raw stream from a distillation tower. And that technology was looking very promising, it was using electricity, it was actually very efficient, and it was recovering the product that we wanted with very, very high rates, so at high yields. But then what happened when you put it in the plant, so basically you put that membrane next to the distillation column, and you start affecting the heat integration that the distillation column had. And then what happens? We have a permeate stream that was very, very nice, and it had very good qualities, but the red intake stream was not that great, and we could not deliver that stream into the product pool directly. So we had to retreat it and put more hydrogen, and all of those steps that I'm saying were reducing the efficiency and of course the carbon footprint benefits of that process. So in the end we had to rethink the problem, and this showed us that we really needed to think about the actual application where we were going to put the membrane. And now I am very glad to say that we have a successful pilot being installed in one of our plants, and it's progressing there. Hopefully it will survive the scale up. There's another example as well that we were using partial oxidation, for example, technology to recover an initially wasteful co-process stream. Everybody was thinking, oh my god, this is going to be terrible from a carbon footprint point of view, partial oxidation is terrible. And then it turned out that when we were evaluating the process in detail, most of the emissions were coming with a very high concentrated CO2 stream. So that was actually, very attractive for carbon capture, and of course, reducing all of the energy consumption that we need to capture that CO2 stream. So it turned out that process, the burden was actually an opportunity, if you want to call it in that way. In many cases as well, when you work in catalysis, you may be in the lab and you may be developing a catalyst, and you may not be too careful perhaps of the amount of nitrogen, for example, that you use. So when you think about evaluating, for example, the environmental performance of your, let's say, catalyst production process in the lab, you may have lab data that is not reflective of what that process would look like when you scale the lab. If you were to manufacture that catalyst, you probably would be optimizing the plant, you would be reducing your nitrogen consumption, you would be making it more efficient. So you have to be aware that when you evaluate the environmental performance of a system at that scale, the uncertainties can be really large to the point that they may actually give you wrong direction conclusions. So I hope basically by now you kind of have a flavor of what I do in my company, which is basically applying my background in chemical engineering, optimization, energy systems modeling, and life cycle assessment to hopefully help the company make a little bit better decisions. What are better decisions? Of course, in this graph that is very representative of my area, it just shows that there are trade-offs. There are always trade-offs. When you develop technology, there are so many objectives to consider: safety, environmental, performance, cost, all of that. So you always find trade-offs. And basically, it's in the same way as when you go and buy a car. I guess if you look at the green dot and the left-hand side dot, you will find probably Tesla and hydrogen cars that are very, very impressive in their environmental performance, but are very expensive as well. And, and in comparison with your perhaps internal combustion engine, they look very nice, but depending on your budget, you may not be able to achieve or buy them, to get to buy them. So there is always a trade-off in the same way in low-carbon technologies, and we have to be mindful that this is a challenge. And I think this community, I think you are really uniquely positioned to have this challenge and actually help us make this curve flatter. So we want to put the red dot at the same level as the black dot right there. And I think the catalysis technology has a very, very unique position for that. And, Vivienne is now going to tell you about all of the funding opportunities that she has in DOE in areas that we also research in, like advanced biofuels, low carbon hydrogen, circular polymers, upcycling waste, as well as process intensification, carbon capture, and energy and CO2 storage. So Niels and I will be waiting for all of your ingenious ideas to happen. Please, Vivienne, thank you so much.
Vivian will tell you all how to access the public gold of the DOE.
Thank you. Thank you again for the organizers for inviting me to be on this inspiring panel. My name is Vivian Schwartz. As I said, I work for the Office of Basic Energy Sciences. So I put this slide here for the benefit of the younger folks here, just to have an idea what BES covers in terms of funding modalities, researchers. It really funds academic researchers, national labs, and this fund chart shows there are single PIs, larger groups like EFRCs, hubs. It is organized among 3 divisions, 2 research-based divisions, chemical science division, which the catalysis science program is located. There is also the material science division, and there is also the scientific user facility divisions that manages and the operation and construction of the user facilities. Many of those you have been using, and I have seen in many talks, make good use of. The mission is really to fund fundamental science in these areas. So the catalysis science program is within the chemical science division, and it's a pretty large scope. It goes from molecular catalysis to heterogeneous catalysis, electrocatalysis. There are researchers that focus on chemical material synthesis or in situ and abronic characterization techniques, chemical dynamics, reaction kinetics, computational approaches, but the final goal is to drive chemical selectivity and activity for efficiency of conversion and minimization of environmental impact. So how do we do at the division level, at the BS level, division level, and the catalysis science program level to determine the research directions and aims for the funding opportunities? So one of the major tools that we use is community input. This is done by BSAC reports, by organizing workshops and roundtables, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about those. National Academy studies, we had one on electrochemistry, synthesis of chemicals, one in CO2 capture, and many others. Roundtables, workshops, in conferences like this, in our PI meetings, interagency interactions. So for instance, currently, the catalysis science program emphasizes catalysis science underpinning sustainable chemical transformations. And topics like catalysis by earth-abundant metals, renewable feedstocks, electron-driven catalytic approaches, circular processing, such as polymer upcycling, carbon-neutral hydrogen production and utilization, those are all emphasized currently by the catalysis science program. Some of those topics, you might say, is not particularly new for this community and for the catalysis science. But I will borrow the words from Tom Jaramillo, who gave an excellent overview and say there is still room for innovation in chemicals and fuels. Indeed, I have seen many talks during this week showing, very innovative approaches Beatrice Roden made this beautiful presentation where she showed how advanced tools coupled with computation approaches can really drive new discoveries and innovation in the field. And that's what we are looking for, fundamental approaches to tackle these challenges. So, as I mentioned, we organize many what we call BRN, basic research needs workshops and roundtables throughout the years. Those workshops are usually larger, about 120 participants from industry, academia, national labs. The roundtables are a little bit smaller, about 20 to 30 participants. It gives us research directions and opportunities. It covers broad themes. We had one in catalysis sciences in 2017, and I'm just going to show very quickly a few others that are very relevant to our topic here, sustainable process, and also very relevant for this community. For instance, we had in 2019 one chemical upcycling of polymers. I don't need to say how relevant it is. We had a whole session on Monday on that subject. We had one in 2019 in liquid solar fuels, and you can see some of the directions are directly relevant to this community, such as control of catalyst microenvironments. Following that, we had a funding opportunity for hubs in this field, and 2 hubs were funded. We had one in 2020 on transforming manufacturing, and if you look at the opportunities there, many are very relevant to catalysis. We had one in 2021 on carbon neutral hydrogen technologies, so topics such as electrolysis without hydrogen production and utilization without CO2 emission were the emphasized here. And the latest one was one on carbon dioxide removal technology. And this is really an opportunity to blend separation science, CO2 capture, and conversion in the catalysis science field. So in this year we had 2 large funding opportunities. One was the chemical material science to advance clean energy technologies and transforming manufacturing. That was aiming for single PIs and small teams to address the topics that I just mentioned. And we have one call for energy frontier research centers, EFRCs, that also cover some of those topics. Those funding opportunities are in support for the so-called energy Earthshots, which is a DOE initiative. Don't have a new mention here about the hydrogen shot. We also have the long duration storage shot and the carbon negative shot. And if you look at the cartoon on the right, those are all ambitious goals, and that will really require going from fundamental science all the way to applied science. And I just wanted to leave here with some of the related activities. For instance, we will have a carbon negative shot summit in July. It's open to the public, and I would encourage some of you that are interested in the subject to look at that. And in FY23, there are plans to launch a new research modality, the so-called Energy Earthshot Research Centers, ERCs. Those will be modeled on the EFRCs, but we really go all the way from fundamental science to applied science, and we require a coordination among different offices within the OE. So with that, I conclude here my introduction. I hope I give you some of the flavor of what BS is doing in this area. Thank you.
Very much, Vivian. That was a really nice perspective. So we'll move on now to the Q&A. I have a list of questions here that you've all submitted over the last couple of days we'll run through, and we've also some that are coming in the session this morning that we will call out as well. So we went through all of the questions that you posed, and quite a few were upvoted, so they're ranking at the top. We're going to pose those now to the panel. So the first question, as a community, why can't we embrace nuclear, solar, wind power and try to electrify chemical manufacturing to reduce carbon footprint whilst we consider the societal aspects? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that definitely electrification is an extremely good option. When you think about how do you need to transform the energy system, you need to think that you have existing capital that has certain ages and you have to basically like amortize. And of course, you need to think if I'm going to invest, what is the best way to invest? In order for electrification to have all of the potential benefits, the grids need to be decarbonized, right? As we were talking about the whole value chain perspective. It's a really great solution, really thinking through, but you need to think that the power really comes from renewable sources. And unfortunately, in the energy system, there are also many competing demands for renewable power. So if you look at IPCC scenarios or International Energy Agency, some of the first areas to decarbonize are usually at the grid. So if you can actually move the grid towards more renewable sources, that would be your first area, and then you will continue, of course, to other applications.
Thanks so much. Any other comments on this? So the second question, is it too dangerous with respect to climate change to solve the methane activation problem? Won't that just enable fossil fuels?
So it's a very good question, but it depends on the time frame you're looking at it. On the long run, for sure, we want to get rid of all fossil, we need to get rid of all fossil fuel usage. But till 2050 is still a long way to go, where we have to introduce some bridging technologies. So in my perspective, for sure, fossil fuel or natural gas will still, for a pretty long time, play a very important role. So regarding the danger or the risk of starting some natural gas-based research now depends on the ambition level of the project we're talking about. So a very long-term project I probably would not start, but if it's really realizable in a shorter time frame, for sure there's no hurdle to go.
Yeah, I think from the DOE perspective, I think all fuels are still something that we have to study, invest, and work on. For instance, there are other offices like fossil fuel that are still working with that, but they even changed their names now. I think it's fossil fuel and carbon management. So there is a different perspective on how to deal with certain fuels while researching more renewable resources.
Great, thank you both very much. What is the most important tech innovation for effective greenhouse gas reduction?
What is the question?
Yeah.
The most effective tech innovation for effective greenhouse gas reduction.
Yes, this is the $1 million question, right? I'm not sure we have one good answer for that. I think researching all the areas are important to actually realize and get to that answer.
It's becoming the amount of greenhouse gases emitted, so probably the power production is the most important.
I don't think we have all the answers, of course. There's definitely many aspects to take into account. So what are the best models for industry to work with academia and national labs to commercialize sustainable technologies? And do our models need to change?
I mentioned
No,
I mentioned some areas that I think that is a really large potential. Of course, we work with those areas, but there are many other that EVN is going to complement. But I think advanced biofuels, low carbon hydrogen or net zero hydrogen, right? Carbon capture and storage, and process intensification, so reducing the steps in the manufacturing processes. I think those are areas that are really, really wonderful for collaboration.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think coordination of different researchers in different areas and all, as I said, all the way from fundamental to applied science, researchers in academia, national labs, this I think will all be required if one wants to get really those ambitious goals.
And also for me, it's an innovation value chain, so fundamental research or very detailed examinations are done at universities in academia, and the industrial role is for bringing the catalyst or the technology to life, and then develop also the mini plant, pilot plant level. So in my daily experience, we have exactly the development model, and it works pretty well.
Thank you all. What is the percentage of our future chemical industry feedstocks that will be supplied from recycled plastics?
Well, it's always a calculation how much of the feedstock we can source from this or that source. But for sure, recycling plastics or chemical industry will for sure not be the only industry interested in exactly this material. So currently I would say maybe 50% or so, if the chemical industry is the sole source of this material. But we do have a large few refining companies who are also interested in this kind of material. I know of projects converting plastics into kerosene, and clear in my eyes that it will never be sufficient material for the oils.
That's the challenge, the scale of the waste recycling, and how much can you bring does not necessarily get to cover completely the whole market. It's kind of very difficult to update that. Waste is a very leading mother source that is in competition for many players.
Yeah. How does electrocatalysis compare to thermal catalysis in terms of the total energy consumption, price, and total environmental impact?
Sorry, could you repeat the question?
Sure. How does electrocatalysis compare to thermal catalysis in terms of total energy consumption, price, and environmental impact?
I have to admit, this is, I have never evaluated that electrocatalysis option, so that's definitely my blind spot. Maybe you can pass on that question to Stu, I don't know. But I think, electrocatalysis looks very promising to me from, like the bird's eye point of view. It looks very promising. I don't know if you really need to look at the details, but sounds good, right? You have to think with lower temperatures, lower pressures, electricity. I mean, it sounds wonderful.
So I see the potential of electrochemistry, especially when we are not, when we stay in the upstream field. So what we see is for sure electrochemistry has a place in water splitting, but also CO2 reduction. I've seen some activities regarding CO2 performing. This is a field where not that much energy, not that much power is needed. When we're further down the value chain, most technologies lack of efficiency. So the further down the value chain we're going with electrochemistry, the less efficient. So the less efficient the renewable power is used. So I think that those technologies have a clear role and a clear place in the chemical value chain. Upstream for electrocatalysis, more downstream for some
Okay.
Yeah, I think there is really room for both technologies. I think actually Tony was mentioning advantages of going lower temperature, lower pressures, but there is also the issue of scaling up. And I think, I think there is room for both. With our current infrastructure, some of the thermal technologies might be more applicable, but if we are looking for more distributed technology, electric catalysis might have a little room there.
Got it, thank you. What are the difficulties of transitioning to bio-based polymers?
We discussed it already shortly before we started here in the panel discussion, and biopolymers is a very great idea. It's good that it mentioned it offers, of course, product with new properties, but it can only be an add-on in my eyes. Because now we are talking about a global market of polymers which is beyond 2 million tons. It's huge. So, this is for the sake of time. Biopolymers can never substitute the existing plastics portfolio by 2050. So, highly appreciated, new technology, and it can grow, and it will play also a role in our net zero targets, but for sure it will not dominate the future.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think the chemical perspective is definitely shared.
Okay. So the next question, what are emerging approaches and opportunities to develop energy efficient separations?
Well, I think that's a very, very current topic, and I actually mentioned some of the studies that were done on national academies and workshops. I think the field is large. There are a lot of players working on this field, and I think one of the directions also is integrated separation and catalysis is also playing an important role. So I think there is a really, really large field for fundamental science here.
I think that sounds extremely good. When you mentioned think about process intensification, definitely that's the kind of future that you wanted to call it, right? The business steps and like things that are transforming one single step. That's definitely the goal. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Which one is more likely to be our future, the hydrogen-based economy or the ammonia-based economy?
I read this question beforehand, and I do not understand the difference. Ammonia-based economy, so I emphasize a little on ammonia as an energy vector, but it can only be realized when we have an initial hydrogen production beforehand. So, for sure, hydrogen production will be the most dominant value chain in the net zero future. And ammonia, for sure, will have its place as for agricultural use, but for sure it's an energy vector. So clearly hydrogen.
Yeah, I think that was I think a good reply. I think it has an niche application for sure when you think about transporting, hydrogen is a gas for sure, and ammonia is a liquid. So there are certain advantages, as Niels was mentioning in the value chain, that ammonia may contribute to to ease, but definitely the future is going to have a share for different things. But it really depends on I guess timing and scales. Yeah, I agree. Ammonia is hydrogen for sure to exist.
Okay, thank you both. Well, final question from the questions that have come in over the last few days before we move to questions coming in this morning. What alternative conversion technologies have potential for production of sustainable fuels and chemicals? alternative technologies.
That's such an open-ended question, right? I think that's what we have, that's what we are pursuing here, right? All the options are open, all the hydrogen, ammonia, all the renewable feedstocks are open here, I think, currently for research and for development.
This is already it's an interesting conclusion of ideas, actually. So there are many ways, and so far it's not decided which one we will do. And of course, it depends also on the boundary conditions. We talk about the sustainable aviation fuel to give the aviation industry a chance to get net zero. We talk also about non-required ships. So let's see what the future brings. For sure, the most efficient use of renewable energy is mandatory, as well as the least capital deployed as possible. So in this field, we will see.
Yeah, the important thing that I would add for that question is mostly the framework from which you approach the solution, right? If your framework is right and you're trying to think through all of these issues about the value chain that we were talking and the energy system, right? Mostly, I hope that the system will, rebalance itself and find the solutions that are the best for it. So, yeah, with clear price signals and all of the new regulatory frameworks that are coming, we will find that.
Thank you. Well, we can move on to some of the questions that have been coming in this morning. The first one here is we need much more work on reducing metal use in catalysis, regeneration and reclamation. Is the community doing enough in terms of material circularity?
It's a long question for the
Yeah.
I would say yes, we're doing enough, and the circularity for the catalyst is there if the current status of the technology for sure precious metals are fully recycled. Some other rare metals, the base metals, are, I would say, recycled to a large extent, and when we see more catalysts produced and some metal materials, some raw materials getting scarce, for sure we will see more activities in recycling. I think we do have the technologies to recycle the necessary elements, but nevertheless, all the technologies can always be improved.
The question was related to recycling catalysis. I think all of the materials that are, valuable are recycled. Unfortunately, as I was mentioning, not all of them may be economical at the moment, so there is room for lots of improvements there.
Okay. Did you have anything?
No, I was just going to agree, circular processing, I think that's one of the major goals to keep a sustainable process.
Okay. So is there sufficient will in industry to take risks with new disruptive processes? It feels we do not have the time to keep aiming only for gradual improvements.
Sorry, I don't know, you started to hear.
So is there sufficient will in industry to take risks with new disruptive processes?
Sufficient will.
No.
I will try to answer. So I think the will is there, clearly there, but currently it's not really a risk because most of the technologies we are talking about are totally out of economics today. I've seen the hydrogen shot target, so $1, 1 kilogram, 1 decade. It clearly depends on the power price. In today's current situation, you will never reach this target. So simply driven by the existing current power price, hydrogen will stay extremely expensive when it's done in an electric way. And therefore, risk would mean that we can fail technologically. But currently, we know for sure that we will fail economically. So then it's not a risk, then it's certain. And so this is now mostly hindering us in driving into the decision.
Clean energy will require more mining for minerals and metals to produce catalysts. Has a profound impact on communities surrounding them. How do you address this?
Well, I was going to say, it's certainly an area that needs to be addressed. I mean, there's no doubt that there is a large issue there, and there is a need to work on research and develop new processes for that.
This is related to materials used in clean energy. Okay. Yeah, I mean, there is definitely, so there are certain minerals that they are not infinite in the earth. So we need to be mindful. There are things that may not, need to scale at the same pace as we are today, growing. So we just need to be mindful of that. And in the same way as, transforming our manufacturing supply chains, it's impossible to just suddenly have millions of megawatts of renewable power straight away right here, because there are value chains that need to deliver that. And that just takes time and takes resources.
Well, one final question. Some green processes will remain more expensive than their fossil counterparts for a long time. What is needed to make the switch despite the drawbacks?
Similar to the question regarding the will to take risk. We need a very stable framework from the politics or governmental frameworks. So, for sure, under the current condition, renewable routes will mostly stay more expensive than the fossil ways. When we have reliable rules regarding CO2 pricing or even some niche markets, for example, that a certain amount of renewable fuel has to be added into the fuel pool. So when we have a stable framework, then of course it can be done. And I see most of the activities regarding the sustainable aviation fuel clearly driven by the requirement to add 10%, I think it's approximately 10% of renewable kerosene into the overall fuel pool. This now triggers the investment in research and then investment in kerosene activities.
Yes, so I think it's very important to de-risk. So we're talking about the challenges of these technologies, right? So to de-risk the technology development processes through that regulatory framework, they need to be very stable and hopefully as homogeneous as possible throughout the world. So that, again, like balance and environmental impacts are not shifted. And of course, the carbon leakage costs, are very famous and everybody knows them. So yeah, the more consistent and the more, I think, homogeneous framework that we have, the better for the world.
Yeah, I would agree. It's coupling innovation with policies. I think when you have this together, I think that's how you somehow de-risk.
Thank you all very much. we only got through about a quarter of the questions that you all submitted, so thank you for engaging in this panel discussion and sending through all of your provocative questions. They were very interesting. As mentioned earlier, we will take on board all of the questions that you have and answer those through a respective article that will be written by the panelists and published in the months ahead. So answers will be forthcoming and we'll keep you updated on that publication. So thank you all for your questions and thanks to the panelists for sharing their perspectives and trying to answer those questions.
Okay, so special from my own personal perspective, thinking of all of it, we're so early in all of this. I'm trying to visualize if it was 1850 and we were sitting here going, how are we going to solve the food and fertilizer problem? That is an immense issue for us all. And who knew that whatever 50 years later, someone's going to discover, ammonia synthesis. So maybe one of you will discover one big advance that will help make this area, really move ahead. We're really in the beginning, and I hope to stimulate some of your thinking and whatever. So we have I think at least one final word, which is that the coffee break is in the area where the hostess sessions were.
In the exhibit hall.
Is that correct?
In the exhibit hall.
Yeah. Okay, so I think we're done. Thank you for attending this morning and for all your input. Enjoy the rest of the meeting.
It's exploding, violence flaring, all is over. They're old enough to kill, but not provoking. They don't believe in war. Oh, what's that gun you took? The name of the Jordan River has bodies floating, but you tell me over and over and over again, my friend. I want to believe we're on the game of destruction. Don't you understand what I'm trying to say? Can't you feel the
Hello, my friend.
force?
Hello, how are you doing?
If the button is pushed, there's no